David, I have a number of questions. I really want to let you talk about Tumblr and how you got to where you are. And we're also going to leave time for lots of questions from the students. But I'm going to try first my description of Tumblr, then you can riff off that and tell me whether I have it right. Because I really enjoyed looking at it, thinking about playing myself. And it struck me that all of the other social networking and blog templates, architecture are kind of like paint by numbers with one set of crayons, and yours is like you created a canvas that people can use paintbrushes and fingers and any media. Is that a reasonable metaphor?
The any media part is really important. So I mean, it's always been really easy, at least in the last decade, it's been really easy to get stuff onto the internet. It's been really easy to chat with your friends on Friendster and then MySpace and now Facebook. It's been really easy to post photos to Flickr, to post links to Delicious, to post ideas to Twitter. The idea behind Tumblr was, I wanted to do all of these things, and I wanted something online that really represented me. I wanted something out there that when people Googled my name, I mean, this was even as a kid, I wanted something that was, me, that I could use to express myself and represent myself. And for all of these tools that existed, there was no place where you could do everything. There was no place where you could express not just the song you had stuck in your head, but a long essay when you wanted to write one, or a short thought, or a photo of the project that you were working on. And that was really the idea behind Tumblr. Was even in an era of the internet when it's really easy to put stuff out there, it was really hard to do it in one place that was yours online.
Well, to paraphrase that, it sounds as though this whole notion came out of your own personal desire to use this medium.
Incredibly selfish. Yeah, it was absolutely just something that
you didn't have this idea. What do you see? If I design this, then it's going to turn into this thing. I'll name it Tumblr, and all of a sudden.
The very first version of it had no name. It was just my blog. I had my own domain name way before I had the Tumblr domain name, and it was just I wanted to set one of these things up for myself. And it wasn't until I was taking my time to do it, and I went through a few different designs, and spent 6 months working on just my blog. And it wasn't until I got to building the tools, until I started to think about, okay, how am I actually going to manage this thing? What are the buttons going to look like? How am I going to build the database to store all of my posts? That I realized, it actually wouldn't be that much more work to let other people sign up for this thing. And as I started to explore that idea more and more, I started to realize, man, if I'm going to all the effort of building this thing, if I really think that this is something that doesn't exist yet, maybe there are other people out there like me who will also appreciate this thing.
Are you surprised at what's happened to it?
Very much, yeah. I think I kept teasing that idea and started to think of how many people this thing might appeal to, and how different this really was from the other tools out there. The fact that in 4 years we've gotten to be one of the biggest platforms is, much more than I certainly ever expected.
Just out of curiosity, how many of you in the room either are a user of Tumblr's facilities or visit somebody else's Tumblr site?
Thank you, guys.
I should have put my own in. Visiting a few people, including your own. Among other things, you're a terrific photographer.
Thank you. I wish I was a better writer, but I take a lot of pride in the stuff that I put there, and that's one of the things that always surprises me, and I just find so delightful about all the people on Tumblr. It's things that you guys put there. It's not stuff that people tagged you in. I mean, you look at my Facebook page, it's unflattering photos of me at parties I'm usually bored at. They're not nothing I'm proud of. Where if you go through my blog, there's a lot of silly stuff in there, but it's stuff that I put there, and stuff that I made, and stuff that I'm proud of, and I'm happy to have you look at.
Complicated question, but it doesn't surprise me that the curiosity and technical facility that you had as a fairly young kid played out this way. But taking this notion of how to use technology, starting with your own personal expression, is one thing. Having it evolve into what must be a fairly complex business, you can't just do it all yourself. How have you gotten the chops to do that? You didn't have any specific training?
Well, I still don't have the chops, and I'm still always playing catch-up, and I'm lucky to work with people who are incredibly forgiving of the fact that I've never done this before, and I'm a terrible manager, and I have to ask lots of questions. But so far, I've managed to gain enough of their respect and and they put up with me, mostly because I do my best to be modest. I do look to my mentors for how to do things, and I don't assume that I'm so clever as to know better than these very smart people that I have working with me. I mean, I have a lot of tremendously talented people who I trust dearly at Tumblr. Most of them are twice my age, and for good reason. And I defer to them on all of these things that I don't know yet.
Given that this has happened really quickly, I mean, since like 2007 is when it really began, you've had to evolve yourself a lot. I'm sure it's consumed your life in a way that you hadn't planned. Where do you see both Tumblr as an enterprise going over the next 5 to 10 years, and where do you see your own engagement with it, or will you at some point move on and do something else?
So there are a lot of ups and downs in running something like this. Every time somebody, one of our users has a bad experience, every time a journalist writes something mean or just something that like turns my stomach. I mean, you constantly oscillate between moments where you just feel like you're going to change the whole world, and moments where you just feel like you just blew it and you had the biggest opportunity ever, and it's all out the window now. It's just, that seems to be a normal pattern for anyone in the entrepreneurial world. Is you constantly bounce back and forth between these highs and lows. My hope is that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, this is a business that still employs me, that I can still work at and enjoy, and I hope it has stabilized into something that I so appreciate going into work every day and just love all of the time I spend on this thing. And as time's gone on and I build up a thicker skin and have a higher tolerance for the lows, I enjoy it more and more, and I get to work with more extraordinarily talented people. I get to show up, and I've seen that even when it's really hard, those moments pass quickly, and you get to move back onto building things and spending time with users who really appreciate everything that you're doing. And 20 years from now, I hope I'm still getting to do all of that, and I hope I appreciate it even more than I do today.
Well, good. That's related to what my other question was, is for many people who have a creative impulse, whether it's use of technology or something else, and it catches fire, whatever it might be, a business idea in or out of technology, often as the enterprise sprawls, the ability to actually do what made you started gets more and more distant, and you're occupied with things that are not related to the original passion that drove it. Has that happened to you, or do you envision it happening to you?
It was clearly, this was clearly important enough to me to put, again, 6 months or more of energy into this before there was anything there, before there was a company, before anybody else was using this thing. So this was clearly something that was a part of me. But yeah, I mean, one thing that you really deal with is, as we're supporting and maintaining not just this product, not just these tens of millions of users, but also a company. We're now 60 people here in New York. And there's a lot more going on in my life to think about. So there are definitely weeks at a time where I don't use my product, and it's actually terribly upsetting, and I usually jump right back over to it and have days where I'm just basically doing nothing but posting to just sort of reinvigorate that creativity. But I think that's one of the reasons you have to start out passionate in these things that you're working on. Otherwise, the day-to-day mundane stuff will just very quickly distract you from the things that actually matter in it. And I think one of the reasons that after 4 years, the product's gotten better and better and hasn't kind of been crushed under the weight of a bigger company and more ideas and more input from more people. I think it's because it's still something that we're incredibly excited about, that we have a vision for, and we haven't lost that yet.
There's been a fair amount of publicity given to the investment that you've attracted because of the potential of the idea. Have you, and if so, how have you managed to maintain creative independence while asking people to invest money in your business now?
So actually, it hasn't been the creative input that's been an issue with our investors. We've chosen our investors incredibly selectively and very slowly. We worked with the same investors for 3 years before adding anybody new. We've been incredibly selective because we wanted to work with people who are really like-minded, who appreciated all of the same things that we appreciated. And beyond that, just appreciated our team enough to give us room and defer to us on things that they maybe disagreed with. To be beyond that, though, the real burden I found in the investment is it creates a lot of expectations. Once you start talking about valuations of companies, look at the amount of look at what Mark Zuckerberg has to deal with. I mean, he has movies being made attacking him. I mean, it's like completely commonplace for very vicious, often unfair stuff to be lodged against his company. When he's doing the same thing the rest of us are. He's experimenting. He's trying to build something cool that people will appreciate, that he's excited about. But once you're talking about companies worth billions of dollars, you have a lot more people who want to pick on you for all sorts of reasons. So I don't know. That's one reason we've actually tried to avoid the press. We've tried to avoid those expectations and not be too much smoke and too little fire. We really want to create low expectations but deliver hugely.
I think I read somewhere that there was one valuation of Tumblr that was $600 to $800 million, something in that range. When you hear things like that, you go, well, Kyle, how did this happen?
So, well, I mean, it's different from my perspective because I was in the middle of that process where we're talking to investors and I'm trying to convince them that we're worth that much because we want their money. And that's, again, those highs and lows are, for a couple months there, here I am running around. I'm in Silicon Valley talking to all of these guys, explaining all of the huge, enormous potential for Tumblr and how much money we're making and how much money we have the potential to make. Again, just feeling like I'm so much smarter than all of these people. We're so clever. We're going to take over the world. And then 2 weeks later, I start actually reading all of the articles people are writing. I start seeing the speculation. I start having people on our team coming and asking about that and about the new investors. And I realize, like, oh, shit, what did I get myself into? And those really, I don't know, you go back and forth. But it's a different perspective for me in that regard, you very quickly go from trying to prove that you're worth that much to going, oh my God, I've got to prove that I'm worth that much.
Well, it sounds amazing. Back on more of the nature of Tumblr itself, sort of a two-part question. One, to the extent that you can do it to an audience that has probably very mixed levels of technical sophistication, describe the architecture beneath the presentation itself, and also describe ways in which you would differentiate Tumblr from Facebook, Twitter, WordPress, other things that people are also familiar with.
I'll start with your second question, which is, I think of all of those products, we all set out to do very different things in the beginning, and I think that's still true in all of those platforms. So I don't know. I'll just tell you I'll give you my quick run through on those three platforms. You guys tell me if you agree with me. So to me, Twitter and Facebook are really about communication, and they're terrific communication platforms. So when I was growing up, AOL was really in its prime. All of my friends were going home after school. We were all like dialing up at 4 o'clock when we got home. And my whole grade of like 34 kids were all in the same chat room. The gossip was going over Instant Messenger. We were sending photos around email because that was the only way to send media around at the time. And it was like some of the most connected I've ever been in my life, and I think that was one of the most connected internets, actually. And since then, people grow up, we're spending more time on the web, on our phones, like it's happening in a lot of different ways. And platforms like Facebook and Twitter sort of evolved versions of that, where you can be a part of this chat room, be a part of this conversation in a much more asynchronous way. So anyway, to me, Facebook and Twitter are spectacular platforms for communication that are a generation beyond AOL, a generation beyond email. WordPress is brilliant and something that I take a huge amount of inspiration from, not just the platform, but their company is spectacular and altruistic. But it really represents a specific type of blogging. It represents writing. It represents online journalism that blogging had really become. So when Tumblr was coming about in 2007, blogging had stabilized as sort of an online newspaper, which is great if you're a writer, but the issue was I can write. I don't really enjoy writing, and there was a lot of other stuff that I wanted to put out there. So you mentioned you looked at my blog. It's photography, it's links, it's the occasional funny YouTube video that I watch. But it's not, every now and then there's a short essay or something in there, but there isn't a lot of that. And if I were a WordPress user, and I've been a WordPress user and a Blogger user, and I've tried all of these platforms. I'm a big fan of them. They're great if you're a writer, not so great if you're anything else.
What I'm curious about, and this might be a more challenging question than I'm supposed to ask you, but I will anyway. As I've read about and observed Tumblr, I think one of the appealing parts of it is that it has an independent, almost renegade feel to it. So it kind of emerged out of a population of folks who have something to express who don't necessarily want to conform to anybody's template or norms or even commercialization. I watched an interview with you where you pointed out that users can even obliterate Tumblr information from their own blog site.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to take out the little powered by Tumblr, if you want to get rid of our themes and make it look any way you want, you can. And interestingly, in the very beginning, that attracted a very kind of design-minded group of publisher creators, basically. It attracted a bunch of people who, for the first time, said, "Oh man, I can have something online that isn't the generic Flickr page, isn't white with the grid. It's not the same blue Facebook page that everybody has. I can create something from scratch." We were really the first platform to let you do that. You could sort of hack it out of MySpace, but Tumblr was the first one that actually gave you the tools to make this look any way you wanted. And it attracted these incredibly creative early users who made beautiful, beautiful things on Tumblr. And I feel like that's really resonated through our community today, or through today, where everybody who signs up takes a lot of pride in those blogs that they create, and that's an amazing feeling. It's also very cool to me that you're not only able to post anything on Tumblr today, but you are in complete control of the presentation. And what that does, it means that we have new users who, before they post anything, spend hours, if not days. They'll set aside a whole weekend just to meticulously craft that page that's theirs on the web before they ever post anything to it. That's a pretty powerful thing.
Well, the challenging follow-up question is, for me, and I admit that I'm not technically illiterate, but certainly don't understand the backroom stuff. It appears from a user point of view that most of the revenue-producing mechanisms that exist in other ways are inevitably intrusive on the creative content itself, banner ads or hyperlinks that jump out at you or other things that then begin to intrude on what you just described as an important thing. How do you manage that?
Well, so one nice thing was we said in the very beginning we hate ads, and we designed our system to basically prohibit us from, as I mentioned, we don't have anywhere near the amount of control that you guys do over your blogs. Anything you want to do with them, you can do, and that makes it technically prohibitive for us to ever put an ad on those pages. And that was very intentional, and it's something that we believed in then, we believe in now, and we're fortunately stuck with things, so we have to figure out how to deal with. Just real quick, to give you a sense of how we think about Tumblr as a business, the stuff that we've moved towards over the years is, I don't know if any of you guys have an Android or iPhone today. You have the ability to go on there and choose from hundreds of thousands of really spectacular apps that, for $2 will permanently make your phone a flashlight, a messaging device, install some Angry Birds on there, and any number of things that permanently adds great functionality to this thing that you have with you all the time. What we started to do on Tumblr is give the ability to really talented designers and developers to give you guys a selection of really spectacular themes, which we're eventually going to extend to really great functionality. So whole new types of posts, whole new types of pages when you want to host your portfolio on there, when you want to host your resume on there, give you more and more of that functionality. And we've created a market, or we're beginning to create those sorts of marketplaces where just like you can choose from hundreds of thousands of these fantastic apps on your phone that Apple didn't make, that Google didn't make, but actually were made by just independent developers who you get to give a dollar to take that app and permanently put it on your phone. We're starting to introduce more and more of that to Tumblr, where we think that there are a lot more creative people that out in the world that don't work at Tumblr than happen to be on our team, and we want to give them the ability to take Tumblr into the future and add all the great new functionality that you guys want to use.
I have one more challenge, but for those students, particularly in the room, who are also fascinated with the possibilities that something like Tumblr presents and would like to make their own life in this, what advice do you have for them? What things can they do now? What should they look for in their own education?
The one that I've always come back to that has has helped me so tremendously is finding mentors and finding them early. I've had the real privilege of, even when I didn't appreciate it, having just people around me who were, even when I didn't recognize them as mentors, there were people around me who would stop me before doing something too stupid, or would plant something in my mind that I would like noodle on for months before eventually appreciating. And as I've gotten older and older, I've tried more and more to keep those really experienced, brilliant people close to me and in a position where, man, anytime I'm just not sure about something, anytime I'm scared or worried or just totally freaked out about whatever I'm dealing with, I have a handful of people I can go to who I just really trust, who know me and all of my shortcomings, where I can go and say, what the hell do I do with this? And having those sorts of people around you early, man, aside from it'll stop you from making just not like big mistakes, but just dumb decisions. And believe me, I've been saved from so many dumb decisions over the years just from having people nearby who are able to kind of raise their hand and go, wait, did you really think about that? And having people who you can ask questions to is it's extraordinary. It's a real privilege. And those people are around you. I mean, you go to Calhoun, this guy has to talk to you, pull Steve aside if you ever, are thinking about what to do next, or are interested in something that none of your friends are that you're thinking about pursuing. You guys have access to a lot of really brilliant people. I would really seek those guys out, spend time, ask all of your questions. And I mean, I remember when I was first thinking about starting a business for myself for the first time, and I was terrified about all sorts of things. I didn't know how offices worked. I was under the impression that being in business meant you automatically had to have dozens of people working for you. I was terrified about hiring my first employee. I was like, what if I can't pay this person? What do I do? Do they hate me? Do they sue me? And I literally went to one guy who I actually met because his kids went to Calhoun. My mom happened to teach them. And I totally randomly met this guy who is one of our investors today and still Fred Seibert, who's just the dearest mentor in the world to me. I went to him with a big list. I had like 20 things on a piece of paper. And I went down the list. I'm like, okay, what's the first thing you do to become a business? Okay, and I was literally just checking them off. Okay, we have to go to this government office and incorporate, or you can do it online. And okay, what about hiring people? You have to hire. No, you don't have to hire anybody. But if you're going to hire people, you should probably have about this much cash in the bank, and you should probably be honest with them and this and all that. And by the way, of all of these things that I was writing down, I probably didn't follow half of them. My first employee, I lied about my age because I was embarrassed by the fact that I was younger than him. All sorts of things I did horribly wrong. I think for a few months I put a salary on my credit card, and lots of things that you're definitely not supposed to do. But I felt much safer, and I was I was only brave enough to do this because I had somebody sitting next to me who was telling me like, yeah, it's fine, you'll do okay, and at the same time was able to stop me before doing some things that would really not have been okay. Yeah.
Well, as James Lipton would say, your students, students from any or all of you. Designate.
Yeah.
It was there was a sort of growing movement on the web when I was starting Tumblr. So those types of blogs that weren't just long text posts, but actually were like a mishmash of different types of media. They were called Tumblr-logs. So Tumblr, sort of like Blogger, we wanted to be the definitive platform for Tumblr-logging, which we wanted to sort of define and invent as those 7 types of posts that could all be mixed together on one page. So it was originally called Tumblr Hub, which is a terrible name, but for its first 6 months of development, it was Tumblr Hub, and then one day, not a spectacular moment or anything. One day I was kind of playing with words, thinking of Flickr, which matches the same naming convention, and I said, oh yeah, Tumblr is actually it's a pretty word. It sounds fine. It's probably memorable. It's like a cup. Nobody really cares. It should be fine. And in a totally unspectacular moment, I came to work. I wrote it down. I showed it to 5 people. They all agreed that was pretty good, and we went with it. Yeah.
You mean you didn't have a $500,000 branding campaign?
No marketing people, just me, just a dumb idea.
That's the way the best things usually happen.
One thing I really like about the name Tumblr is that it's pretty beautiful in a lot of foreign languages. I've heard it in French and Portuguese and Spanish, and it sounds okay, which some companies have not been fortunate with.
Now, and what is your growth rate recently?
The way it kind of stacks is we have 36 million people who have blogs on Tumblr, They serve an audience of about 120 million people. Half of those are in the US and half of those are international. And then of those 120 million people, they generate about 15 billion impressions a month. So yeah, they spend a lot of time on this thing. And I believe today we're registering like between 70 and 80,000 new people create blogs on Tumblr every day, which is awesome. That's incredible.
It's just incredible.
How do you feel about other network sites such as Reddit that let you just kind of share, like, kind of anything you want, like pictures, information?
I mean, man, they're all just like a different flavor. I adore Reddit. So there are basically three sites I use on the internet pretty religiously. Those are Tumblr, Reddit, and Hacker News, which is like a tech news site. So they're just different things. And when I'm out of stuff on Tumblr, when I get to the top of my dashboard and I'm waiting for somebody to post something else, I jump over to Reddit and look at what the top list is that day. I love, what I really, really like about Reddit is how perfectly timed that front page is, so that you can check it in the morning and it'll be 10 interesting things. They're the 10 most interesting things that day. And then I can check it again at the end of the day or when I go home and it'll be 10 whole new things. And it's kind of perfectly paced, so every day that homepage churns about 20 to 30 things that you get to check out and see. I don't know, it's a different sort of experience though, and it's not programmed, right? You go on there and you see all of the stuff that community cares about. Tumblr, you get to choose your own community. You get to, and by the way, there's no presumption that you have to follow all of your classmates here the way Facebook does, right? Or even like is kind of the norm on Twitter. Tumblr, you can follow the three of these guys that whose photos you actually like or who actually have similar taste in music that you do, which is pretty different from any of these other networks out there today, where the presumption is either it's your entire social network or it's just whatever that community is about. If that makes any sense.
How many people do you have working with you?
We're 60, so the breakdown is about 30 of those are engineers, 20 of those are customer service, and the rest are sort of business people. Yeah, we try not to hire too many business people.
Sorry?
Do you find that as the site has grown, have you marketed it to a particular age demographic, or has it just been a variety of different people who have come into the
We
site?
really haven't marketed it, and actually that's most evident internationally, where nobody really has a clue what Tumblr is, because everything we write is in English. So overseas, communities will find this thing. As an example, we're really popular in Japan, which is not an English-speaking country. We're huge in the Philippines too, but that's because English is hugely popular as a second and first language there. But Japan, we're like hugely popular, and nobody has a clue what this weird American company is, and we're just now trying to get around to fixing that. But no, we've really never marketed it, and the people that show up are kind of always a surprise to us. We have noticed it goes in patterns though. For the first 2 years, it was a older, we'll say 25 to 35, webhead crowd. They were people who were already building websites, who were excited about blogging, already doing that sort of stuff. And then, aside from we started to get a more international audience, we were almost entirely US back then. This was 2009, let's say. All of a sudden it went 60, 70% international as we had people overseas signing up for the first time. And then, more recently, we've seen, I'll say not this September, September 2010 was the first time we had the 18 to 25-year-olds show up in full force, and all of a sudden we saw our traffic patterns change significantly. All of a sudden, Sunday night was our biggest traffic night. We realized that over the summer our traffic swells, and then in September now it goes from totally consistent traffic through the week to, if you actually just zoom out and look at our traffic from the last 6 months, it's literally straight through the summer, just growing. It's still growing now, but the traffic looks like this as I guess you guys are in school during the week, and then you come back online over the weekend and spend a whole lot of time. So that's a totally new phenomenon for us, which is interesting, because it's a whole new crowd of people using it in a whole different way and giving us a lot of new ways to understand. So I was still living with my mom for the first, my mom and my younger brother for the first year of it, which by the way was terribly embarrassing for me, because I was working with all these people, I was doing interviews for newspapers and things, and I tried so hard not to let on that I was still, I still had this tiny little box of a room with my little laptop and bags of Tostitos in my mom's apartment. It was actually spectacular because I had incredibly supportive parents, which I'm very grateful for, who gave me room to do this thing. I'll say if you guys have the entrepreneurial bug, if you're want to take chances, if you're looking to start a business or launch a product or pursue your art, I wouldn't feel badly about, unless they really want you out, I wouldn't feel badly about spending a couple extra years with your parents. It's a pretty wonderful thing to get to save up some money and, not have to worry about feeding yourself, or paying your rent for a little bit longer. And it gave me a lot of room to pursue the things that I was really excited about. To be honest, I was much more excited about building this thing than I was about, becoming an adult. So I took advantage of that.
Well,
I've noticed that Tumblr has no censorship.
Yeah.
How, and Facebook and stuff are very cautious about how they send what posts are put and stuff.
Mhm.
Why did you guys choose to?
So actually, it started, it wasn't a philosophical distinction in the beginning. It was mostly laziness. It's a lot of work to censor your stuff. So, we have, what is it? We have 50 million posts on Tumblr every day. We're 60 people. So it's totally impractical for us to censor that effectively. But beyond that, there is the philosophical question of what would we want to censor. Basically our rules are, if it's illegal, if it actually infringes on someone's content, so if you post my photo without permission and you don't credit me and I don't like that, then I can go to Tumblr and ask them to take it down. If you're defaming somebody, if you're doing something that's destroying someone's life, we don't let you do that. We actually do have pretty sensitive policies around kids. So when there's bullying going on, when somebody's posting something defamatory or hateful about a 14-year-old, we usually will go in there and just block it, basically. But this has been a really interesting, it's just so many weird questions surface that you would never normally have to deal with. We are effectively managing this government for this community that right now has a lot of room to do a lot of stuff. And interesting moral questions come up, like when people start putting up suicide posts, when they start talking about self-harm, when we have users who are posting instructions on how to be bulimic or anorexic. All of a sudden we have very hard questions to answer. By the way, questions that I am so not sophisticated enough to answer, and so I've started to surround myself with more people who are good at dealing with those sorts of things. So as an example, we just brought on a guy who's he literally just left the White House. He's been the deputy CTO of the United States for the last 2 years. He ran policy at Google for 7 years. Really brilliant people who've been thinking. He's an academic, a professor at Harvard and Stanford. People who've been thinking about that sort of stuff for a long time and can answer those questions really well. And interestingly, those types of people usually side on don't block anything, don't censor anything. Just when we have any moral bias against something going on in our network, find tactful ways to deal with that. And interestingly, Google deals with this very clearly in one particular aspect, which is if you search for Jew on Google, which is kind of a charged word, the very first result is it's a very anti-Zionist, horribly anti-Semitic website. But Google's position is that their neutral point of view, they wouldn't censor that stuff. They wouldn't adjust their algorithm just to kick this one site down. So what they do is they show you this very anti-Semitic site when you search for Jew, but right next to it they show you a little sticker that says, even though we don't agree with this content, we're showing it to you, and here's why. And you click over, and there's a letter basically expressing that we're determined to be a totally agnostic, neutral point of view platform. And in keeping with that, we're going to show you some things, even if we think that they're morally unconscionable. And that stuff's fascinating, but it's way over my head. Yeah.
I've been told that we have time for one more question. Deja, you've been patient.
What has been the best thing about being a creator?
The really amazing thing about building, Tumblr it's sort of our art project, but more than it's the art, it's sort of the paintbrush, right? I like to think about Tumblr as giving you guys a new color to paint with or a new canvas to paint on. And the most rewarding, inspiring thing doing that is getting constantly surprised by what people actually use it to do. And I swear, we put out our Tumblr Tuesday thing every week, which is just a feature of about 5 blogs that we found on Tumblr that week. But every day we have a chat room at work that we're all in, and we're just constantly posting these bizarre or awesome things that people are doing. Some of them are, some of them are protesters and uprisings. Some of them are bizarre art projects. Some of them are teenagers who are putting spectacular writing out there and building up huge audiences. Some of them are people who, lost their jobs and decided that they wanted to start posting their photos and end up with book deals or end up going off to work at Vanity Fair. And really spectacular, magical things that just like, I mean, God, they make us cry sometimes. It's the most rewarding thing in the world. It's different than being an artist where you put all of your effort into this one thing and put it out there and see how people react to it. We put these tools out there. Artists do extraordinary stuff that we react to and that hundreds of millions more react to. It's an amazing, amazing privilege that I'm very grateful